We live? We good? We live. We live, Greg? Good? Okay. All right. Guys, welcome to the next episode of the podcast, where today I'm bringing on civil engineering researcher, climate change researcher. He's at the University of Utah studying climate change with an emphasis on global warming and carbon. Please welcome the one and only Shane Curson. Shane Curson.
Wow. Thank you. Wow.
You're welcome.
What a great introduction. Thank you.
Wow. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Wow. It's great to be here.
You know, we go way back, probably now 4 or 5 years, but you know, it's been a while. It's been a while since we last talked.
Yeah. No,
right?
yeah.
When has it been? Probably like
5-6 years.
That's crazy. Yeah. So
it's great to see you again.
It's great. It's great to see you as well. I mean, where we begin? I mean, we got a lot to talk about.
Last 5 years, I mean, things
have kind of gotten really crazy, and then they've gotten. We thought they were going to get better, but then now it's at a point where it's getting worse again, kind of in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, let's get this out of the way. It's June 12th, right? It's officially Pride Month. Woohoo!
Yeah.
So we got a lot. There's parades going on. We got a lot to. That's great. We saw a parade right before this. We just came back from parade downtown Salt Lake City, and everything that's been going on has just been important and cool. So sort of like it's been kind of a crazy year for the Pride community, the LGBT.
LGBT crazy but a great year, a phenomenal year. Some might say.
Right, and some long members of the community like myself might be a little like nervous about the changes that are going on within the community, but I think it's important, and I think overall it's been kind of a great transition into what it is today. So what are some of the important things as we're in 2022 now? What kind of like changes have you been noticing about the Pride?
Wow, putting me on the spot right off the bat.
Well,
wow.
I know you have been kind of involved in this very.
Well, let me start by saying I went to the store to look for rainbow batter to bake a cake for my son. He actually just came out as trans, bi, pansexual, and
how old is he now?
11.
Oh, awesome!
So we just went to the store and we were looking to get him something special for that occasion.
Yeah.
Nothing. Which I don't know whether to be excited about.
Where'd you go?
We went to Walmart, Target. We went to Costco. We went everywhere.
Wow. Okay. I was gonna say I go to Target, but Target.
That's the first thought. That's what you would think, right?
Well, here's the thing: we are in a very red state, and there's still a lot of folks who are not in the now with this whole thing. So it makes sense. I mean, there are we can just buy stuff online.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I think we really have to give a shout out to Amazon.
But I'm so glad you brought that up. Your son is 11 years old, and I think it's great how we're starting to get them out of their shell. Just keep going. I can cut this out over. I just kidding. All right. But it's so. All right. But it's so great, your son is 11 years old, And I think, it's great how we're kind of exposing them to this community at an early age because, as you and I both know, I'm a straight male. I'm a straight white male, which unfortunately is, kind of. But I'm still like very involved with the community.
Well, you're an ally. You are an ally.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. But I'm sort of like masked from that whole thing until like I was like 20 years old or something. So I think it's great that we're exposing kids at a younger age because we need a generation that can grow up kind of in this inclusive environment, and I think having your kids come out and at a young age as either gay or are transgender is a good thing. Too many parents trying to suppress their kids from transitioning into male or female from what they were born with.
Well, I think that's a great point that you're bringing up. And if you try to put yourself in the position as a young gay male, such as yourself. Okay.
You start.
Okay, I'll just say. Okay. Well, I think if you look back and you can't fucking do it.
I know.
Okay, okay.
I can't do it today.
Alright, hold on. Well, I think if you try to go, I can't do it. It's so stupid. It's so fucking stupid. Alright, hold on. Yeah, let's take a second.
We weren't laughing like this the first time.
That's because it's just so stupid. I mean, like, it's so dumb. Alright.
Put your water on the table.
Oh, yeah. Alright.
Oh, what were you saying?
I don't think I'm going to be able to say it. Alright, hold on.
Just
Alright, so
breathe.
I think if you put yourself back in the position as, in the neighborhood we grew up, yourself, myself, being part of the LGBTQ community, I just think some of these kids these days don't have parents that are supportive of them in such a red state. But it would have been good, for such as ourselves, it would have been good. It would have been nice to know that society had our back. That even if home wasn't a safe place, everywhere, literally every inch that we looked was.
Right.
So.
And there's so many people, especially in a red state like where we are, who just don't understand. Like the conversation changes a lot when you'd be talking about for example, a transgender female. The conversation changes if you're talking about a black transgender female.
Oh, absolutely. And by transgender female, that simply means that, in case people, that means you are a female.
Right.
You are. So.
Right. However, the conversation changes even if the context is the same. It's the conversation may not necessarily be the same if the context is the same. It might change also depending on who you're talking to.
Absolutely. I think the fact that you brought, there's a big movement, Black trans lives matter.
Right.
I think it is. It's an entirely different conversation when you're talking about a transgender who may identify with the African American community, of course, or another racial ethnic background.
Yeah. So that's great. I could talk about pride all day, right? But we got a lot to get
Tell
to.
me about it.
Right? Yeah. So what I really wanted to talk to you about, because this is your area of research, is the whole climate change thing, right? We've known about sort of these detrimental effects that the carbon is causing our environment. We've known about this for decades, and yet here we are at a point where we're still we're still driving gas cars. We're still eating meat. We're still doing all these things that are just destroying our planet. And I've heard these arguments out there that increasing CO2 is actually good for the long-term health of our planet because we're actually terraforming this planet. And that in the time of the dinosaurs, millions and millions of years ago, we had a higher CO2 content in the atmosphere, but we also had a higher oxygen content because of that. And we had more plant life and more life in general. And that, humans are coming around at this time that is supposedly preventing an ice age by our release of CO2 into the atmosphere. So what are your thoughts on this sort of argument that is, in my opinion, just sort of a excuse for people not to care about climate change?
Well, I think, I don't know if you saw my conference when I spoke at the DW in 2018. Actually, it was with Don. You remember Don?
Yeah, we love Don.
Yeah, so yeah, that's, wow. Yeah, I haven't seen him since. I mean, he's a great guy. Great guy.
Totally.
He was,
he's one of those guys that, you might not agree with everything he's saying, but he will tell you things straight, and he's willing to listen to sort of your points.
Exactly. He's very respectful.
He's very tolerant, which is something we don't see from a lot of people, especially for people on the right. But go on. You were talking about the conference.
Yes, 2018. So that was actually a big point that was brought up, was whether this actual CO2 is actually benefiting us. And I think you have to think back and realize that we are carbon-based life forms. Whether you want to look aside from that, look over the top of that, or look around that, we are carbon-based life forms. And carbon is in the atmosphere on this earth. So I think a lot of people don't understand that. So when we are emitting carbon dioxide, it's going into the atmosphere. So
exactly, and you said it perfectly right, that we are carbon-based life forms, and so therefore an increase in CO2 will harm us. We aren't dinosaurs.
Absolutely,
right?
We're humans, right?
Yeah.
I
mean, yeah, that's what I was thinking. If we were today to melt the ice caps, complete global warming, right? We might not necessarily die from the increase in temperature. We actually, we'll be fine from that. It's what they don't understand is the increase in the hurricane power and the rising sea levels will completely destroy the entire coastal cities.
Mm-hmm.
And people who kind of bring points like that up are simply just, they don't look at the science, and that kind of seems like the main theme with the conservative, the far conservative, even the middle.
Well, it's on both sides. It's both sides.
No, absolutely.
I think it is more prevalent.
Well, it's
on the right.
It's propagated by sort of these crazy right wing people.
Yes.
And they kind of stir up sort of these emotions like, they're gonna take away all your gas and stuff like that. No, we're not gonna take away your gas, but we're just going to incentivize the use of electric cars and solar power and stuff like that. We need to take away some of the power from the oil and gas companies who are getting rich off of polluting the environment, and we just need to incentivize clean energy, green.
Yeah. I think this is actually a great transition point, because what you were bringing up about the dinosaurs, right? We're looking back, millions, if not billions of years.
100%.
We're looking back millions plus further back years when we're looking at dinosaurs, and why would we
not just millions, like hundreds of millions?
Is it hundreds of millions? Okay, so hundreds of millions of years ago, and if we're basing our science off of that, I mean, I think a lot of people in this country are starting to realize, why are we basing our society based on a document that was written 200, 300 years ago by a bunch of by a bunch of old white guys, 200, 300, no.
Well, I want to get into that, but this carbon thing. So a lot of people they think global warming can't be real because I just went outside and it was cold, or it's look at the sky, it's beautiful blue sky, it can't be climate change. Well, people don't understand that there's a difference between climate and weather. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just science, right? So people say oh, I don't believe in climate change. Well, though, you got to look at the actual science that's being done. I think when you look at the science, even and you just look at the science, you just don't question it or anything. Just look at the science, and it'll show you right there that the climate change is happening.
Well, okay, this is a really great point you're bringing up, and I've heard that far too often. Well, it's cold outside. And I think a great analogy here, and we'll get into the economy later, I would imagine. But if you look at, it's like, for example, under the Trump administration, we saw, or as a result of the Trump administration, we saw a rapid decline in the stock market. But then you might have some people saying, oh, well, the stocks are up today. Wow, that's somebody who can't, fathom, the science. And, if you look historically at it,
it's basically all on the right.
It is.
Even the right, even people on the right are starting to wake up to it. Even the people on the right, they're starting to say, "Oh, maybe we need to do something about this."
Well, thank God for that.
Dangerous. All right, yeah. Well, we've talked about climate change, and I think it's pretty clear to anyone who just goes outside today, and it's very hot now compared to a couple of years ago. So
yeah, just go outside. I mean, go outside right now, and it's going to be hotter
what is
than
it today. I mean, it's June, which is summer, but it's 86 degrees. I mean, that is just unheard of for Salt Lake City. What else? So that is your area of research, right?
Yes.
What you've also been researching other things, sort of side things, like the economy.
Yeah.
And I mean, right now I can't hear the end of it. It's like the economy is terrible right now, and I can't fill up my gas tank for gas is so expensive. All this stuff. So should people freak out? Should people be freaking out right now, or is this sort of just kind of the Trump era policies having their lingering effect? And that will subside once Joe Biden's policies start being taking effect.
Well, the sad thing is the Trump administration gets credited for all these things that happen: low unemployment, low crime rates, etc. When in reality, it was simply a result of the Obama administration.
100%.
The lingering effects of that, and now we see the lingering effects of the Trump administration, and people are giving this credit to Biden, and so I think, but going to your question about the oil, I think if you look at the macro, social, political, economic state of the country, I think this is natural. This is natural. This is something that happens.
People don't understand that this is kind of just how the economy works. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, right? Sometimes just how the market works, and you can't really blame Joe Biden for this. It's not like there's a magical switch in the White House or a dial where you can just set the gas prices at a whim, right? Well, this is not a thing. So I think people just need to look at the facts and what they're saying, and I think we'll be fine. Right? Am I right in saying this, or am I being too optimistic?
Well, as long as we can keep the executive branch of the government blue, I think we'll be okay.
By the way, this is the perfect opportunity for people to buy an electric car because buy electric car, zero carbon emissions. There's none.
None.
There's none. Not even the production of the electricity. There's none. So
yeah,
we really just need to. I think people. This, if anything, will be a wake up call to people that it's time to start transitioning from fossil fuels because they're so unreliable compared to.
Not only unreliable, but they're killing us.
Right.
They're killing us.
Right.
People. They are killing us.
Exactly. 100%.
They're.
This thing we have, this experiment that we're doing, where we're just like putting a bunch of harmful carbon into the atmosphere. It's terrible. So that needs to change.
Something I wanna ask you. CPI hit 8.6%. That is
Wow.
40-year high.
That is crazy.
So I want to ask you. I mean, just one word. Bitcoin. What is right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a thing that's been kind of hitting the market recently, and I think it's people's attempt, and it's really just right wing. It's really propagated by these right wing right wing people who are propagating this whole thing. And I think it's really just deployed to sort of create distrust in the U.S. mint, in the U.S. dollar, because right now we have the inflation and everything that everyone's complaining about. Well, that's not necessarily Joe Biden's fault. That's just the result of these sort of right wing nuts kind of going crazy over this. Kind of just investing in this Bitcoin. And I've had other people on the podcast, and they've given me evidence that this is a orchestrated ploy by these people to create economic distrust in our currency. And I just think it's not real. It's just it's a virtual coin, yet it's somehow getting all this attention. I think it's just terrible.
Yeah, I think one good thing that comes out of it is artists are finally being recognized with their digital art, known as NFTs, as we're seeing. I think
100%.
That's something to do.
Which is it's good to see art. However, the artists aren't really the ones benefiting from this sort of scheme.
Huh.
It's really the sort of the investors and the stockbrokers who at the end of the day are going home rich, while the rest of us are working 40 hours a week and working hard and
scrounging
just to make enough money to not even make enough money to live. Yeah. Right. So that's another thing we wanted to talk about is sort of the how we need to sort of get more people give people a universal basic income.
Oh yeah.
That's have you been researching this universal basic income at all, and sort of been pushed forward by prominent Democratic figures?
Well, I actually gave a talk on this. I actually gave a lecture on this at a conference in 2018. So this was something that I think a lot of people. This idea was new to a lot of people, and I gave a talk about it. So I am a proud supporter of the of universal basic income, because I think every human being has universal rights, and just because they're not written in this document, this 200-year-old document, written by a bunch of white guys. I don't think that means it's not necessarily a right. I mean, if we just
what defines a right? Again, like you were saying, are we going to because I don't think people kind of look into this old document, like you were saying, this Declaration of the Constitution, and they're saying, well, let's follow this. Let's follow this. We gotta follow this. Like, should we be following this? I mean, people look back at these figures, these golden figures like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. A lot of people look at them like these great guys, but a lot of people don't know these guys. They owned slaves. They owned slaves, and they raped and pillaged. And so, are we going to take advice from these old white guys?
Great. I think you're bringing up a really great point here. I'm glad you brought this up because
how many women or people of color were in those rooms writing those documents?
Absolutely. I think that's a really amazing point.
It's a simple question that they can't answer.
None, because they didn't have rights.
But they won't say none. They'll tiptoe around the question. They'll be like, well, yeah, well, let's not look at that. Let's look at all the good that's been done. Listen, there's been a lot of bad done as well, and they've kind of been blinded by that. But I think it's perfectly reasonable to consider free healthcare a right. I think it's perfectly reasonable to consider schooling a right. I think it's perfectly reasonable to consider a living wage
Exactly.
a right.
I think anything with enough, if there's enough, protesters or there's enough, people fighting, if there's enough passion for something, it deserves to be a right, no matter what it is.
Exactly. 100%.
I want to go back to what you said. There were none. The answer is none. There was no African. There was no trans woman. There was no African American or Muslim or any of those types of people in that room doing those rights. And even today, they don't have those rights.
So it's only just now we started to include these people in the political discussion, and they represent a huge portion of the population, and it's even like why if you're an 11-year-old who's, let's just say you happen to be trans, you're happy like your son happen to be trans. Why are you like? Who can they look up to in that sort of conversation? What figure can they look up to? Are they going to look up to Mike Lee? this old white guy? Are they going to look up? Oh yeah, I want to copy his opinion, or are they need to have sort of a figure that looks like them, that acts like them, maybe is trans. Why not? Is trans in the political discussion? We simply do not have that because we're so locked into these sort of. It's so ingrained in us to be racist and homophobic and transphobic and all these, and xenophobic and
all the phobics.
Yeah, all of them.
That's a great point. I think the Biden administration is doing an excellent job at appointing people who are trans,
right,
to give these young children people to look up to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but and another thing is there's a lot of hate and bigotry on the right, and they pretend like there's not. They pretend like there's sort of like this tolerant sort of party.
We've all seen it.
Well,
we've all seen it.
They pretend that, and then but when it's time, okay, well, why don't you put your money where your mouth is and elect some of these people to represent your party? And they're like, well,
it totally shows. They out them. They're totally outing themselves. As
they're totally just gaslighting everyone.
Absolutely, yeah, I would say so. I mean,
can I tell you about this experience I had at the convenience store the other day?
Talk about that.
So, I was at the convenience store looking for, I was getting some kombucha for yerba mate, and I was getting, I was reaching into the fridge, and I got my favorite brand. It's yerba mate. Yerba mate. So I grabbed that, and then there was this old white guy, this old trucker. He had a Trump hat on.
Gosh.
A shirt that said like I hate black people,
Oh man.
and he just walked up and was like, huh, what are you're such a soy boy, drinking that
Oh, God.
sort of crap. And then you know what I said back to him? I said, yeah, well, at least I'm not drinking Diet Coke.
Wow.
It was like 300 pounds.
Wow. Gosh.
Yeah, I was like, you can use a few of these, but
Oh wow.
so yeah, I mean, just like kind of culture differential was quite clear there.
You know, something I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Why do they care? Why do they care?
I don't know. Maybe it's because I was wearing a love is real or love is love. The
Yeah.
shirt. Sign, we in this like I put out on my shirt said in this I believe that we'll link the shirt later for you guys if you want to purchase it, but it just says love is love. We believe love is love.
Science is real.
Science is real. No human is illegal. All these things that these right wing people see and they just go crazy because obviously they're not. They're not tolerant and they don't believe in science.
And you're just living your life. I don't understand why they care so much.
Sure, yeah.
Like if somebody wants to be, identify with their gender, like why does that affect you? Like why is that so much of a problem to you, right? Like,
so I had a conversation with the store owner and told him he needs to I'm never coming back here because you're letting these people in your store, and I just think that's terrible. So I had a conversation. So these guns, right? This has been going around in the news. These sort of these complaints on the right that left's trying to take away their guns, because of the school shootings and everything, which is just terrible. So I don't understand why it's been taking so long. I mean, enough is enough. Thoughts and prayers, you can take those thoughts and prayers and throw them out the window, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because they don't act. We need real change.
we need to send positive vibes. I think is the big thing there.
Right, exactly. Who knows if these people are who knows if these kids are religious? Maybe they're sort of on the spectrum. Maybe they're a minority, and a lot of them are. Then you don't want to say thoughts and prayers because that implies that they are religious. What if they're not? What if they?
And it's so easy to just include everyone and just say, sending good vibes, sending my vibes, thinking about you,
Right.
and that includes everybody, and that's such an easy change. And we just have a lot of bigots on the right who don't see it that way.
So back to the Second Amendment thing. I think it's just, I think it's terrible how, we're still listening to this document like we've already said, it's like 200 years old, written by a bunch of old white guys, and I mean back in the day they weren't allowed to buy cannons, right? They weren't allowed to just buy a cannon. And why are you?
Wow.
And obviously we have nuclear weapons now. You're obviously not allowed to own those.
Yeah.
Because we all agree that's terrible. So why can't we extend that just a little bit further and ban some of these high capacity mega weapons like the AR-15? Why are we allowing these guns to be circulated? Because these are the guns that are causing all of the killings in the U.S. and in other areas.
Well, I think this goes back, to the document, that was written by this 200-year-old document, right, written by a bunch of white guys, and I think it goes back to I mean, they didn't have a police, they didn't have police to protect them, so they figured, give people guns. But nowadays, we have security, we have police, we don't need But I mean, I guess that raises another question, of defunding the police, which is absolutely something we need to talk about. But,
Right.
we could be having social workers out there talking down the shooters. There's no reason to have these guns everywhere. I mean, it's caused nothing but problems.
Right. We sort of. I mean, you're looking for all the people who have mental health issues. I think a good place to start is to sort of just get a list of all the people who bought guns, and maybe question a lot of them, because I guarantee you about 80% of those people are, a little messed up in the head. I mean, who needs a gun, right?
Yeah.
If you really think about it, who needs a gun? And like hunting, I don't get why you need why. It's not like the deer are wearing Kevlar vests.
Wow.
So it's not like the deer are it's not like they're wearing Kevlar vests. So why do you need like a AR-15? When you could just use an old shotgun or something.
Bow and arrow.
Right. Or I just don't hunt at all. I mean, it's like it's kind of a primitive sort of thing, and it's just it just satisfies that male urge to.
We'll talk about
kill.
Yeah, I mean, talk about toxic masculinity, especially in
Right.
2022.
I mean, talk about a good outlet for toxic masculinity. I can't think of anything better than hunting.
Yeah, well, think back. I mean, you think back, 200 years ago. That was the peak of toxic masculinity. Back around that document. The document is full of nothing but toxic masculinity.
Right.
And that's if we circulate that document today, we're circulating toxic masculinity.
And I think a good point is when you think about like back in the day and the sort of like toxic masculinity that's going around. As they say, history is written by the victors. And if you go back, there's a lot of there's a lot of minorities. There's definitely some. Well, there are trans and gay people, however, they can't come out because it's just too it's too risky for them and their family. But you go back, there's actually, if you look, there's a lot of people who were very happy under British rule because they had free healthcare, they had free healthcare, they had free education. Anyone could go to college, right? And so a lot of people, like after the Revolutionary War, were like, oh, "Crap, we don't have. Now we're under this like." People like to say the British were a tyrannical government. Maybe for the old white guys, but for everyone else, it's the people they're getting like sort of crushed by this new American government, and they're not allowed to express themselves. They're kind of just like swallowed up in this toxic masculine new society, and I think it's important that we kind of shed light on that history because it's quite powerful.
Well, you're on the edge here. People are especially white males in America are worried about socialism and talk of socialism is communism. Well, communism isn't inherently bad.
No, 100% not. I was having a conversation the other day, and I say, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we all just had like a little bit of extra money so we can cover our expenses and not have to worry about getting gypped by our bosses and everything. I was having this conversation the other day, and then the same person I come to later, they agreed with me. They were like, "Yeah, that would be so nice." I would say, "Oh, I said, Karl Marx wasn't that bad of a guy. He had a lot of great ideas." And he was like, okay. Like he looked at me, didn't even believe I said it. He was so like taken aback by that, and I sort of had to like explain to him like, no, communism isn't that bad. And eventually he's like, oh, I get it now. But it's like this word, that communism, it's just associated with people, like it's ingrained into us as Americans to just hate it.
I think it's the propaganda we've seen, particularly on the far right.
Well, yeah, and it's like the old people are still living in that era of the 1980s, and you're like, oh, Russians, oh, we're gonna worry about the Russians and everything. It's like, well, I mean, times are changing, right? Communism. I think people are starting to look at communism nowadays and realize maybe it wasn't that bad after all. It did a lot of good for a lot of people. And sort of again, like you were saying, people on the right, and they're kind of just echoing these sort of talking points like, oh, Russia, oh, we gotta worry about Russia, oh, like why can't life be like it was in the 50s, and we need to lower the taxes and everything. Well, I mean,
That's not how things work.
it's not how things work. It's not. People say, well, oh, look at the communist regimes; they never do well. They say, look at Russia, like it fell, or USSR, it didn't do too well. Well, that's just because of like the location they're living in. It's cold. They don't have a lot of natural resources, and that's what. But look at China; they're doing some great things, and they're communists.
I don't think you. Okay, I got a challenge for you. Find me one person who's actually read Karl Marx and thinks communism is inherently bad.
That's the thing. They never read. They never never get into the literature because they're only
Because they don't-
exposed to this sort of Fox News propaganda, right wing
Anti-science.
Yeah, and I challenge you, if you're watching this right now, just read the first 2 pages of Karl Marx, the Communist,
Manifesto.
the Communist Manifesto. Read the first 2 pages of that book. I guarantee you that it will change your outlook on this for good. So, what is your sort of perception on the growing sort of the perception from the right, which is a perception about the idea that this sort of this sort of like growing, like we've gone over a bunch of examples, climate change, communism just now, and we've even gone into sort of the science about the transgender and how it's good. What is your what party do you think is kind of how do you think the right is? What do you think has been the big shift within the past, let's say, 10, even like 20, 30 years ago? What do you think has been the big shift for the people on the right in terms of this kind of idea?
Well, I actually gave a talk on this. I did a lecture on this conference at 4 years ago, 2018. I gave a talk on this. So I think the big shift there. I think it became. I think it was always changing, but I think the catalyst was the Trump administration. I gave a talk on this in 2018 and during the Trump administration, and I think that's what we've seen. I mean, this country is more divided than we've ever seen. So and of course, you have Reagan and those white guys, and influencing it. But I think
Quick question.
the big thing was Trump.
When is the last time? When have you ever seen a person of color who's also an ally on the right? It's a rhetorical question because the answer is obviously no.
Oh.
So I mean, I think it just shows everything you need to know right there. So,
Well, let me ask you something. When's the last time you've seen a person of color on the right?
listen. I'm gonna be real with you guys here. I am obviously not a person of color, and I'm I'm gonna be honest. I am a straight white male, so I even though I try and kind of through this podcast and other means make this information, sort of these talking points, available for people of color in this sort of situation. I myself am a white straight male, so I urge the rest of you listeners who are white males who are also straight that you don't have to be these people to be part of the movement. And that's one thing that I think is been a big shift for the Pride movement on the past 3 years. There's been a lot of white straight males waking up. I mean, I have been there almost since the beginning, right? I've been saying this probably since 2012 or something that people would attack me for this, for being a white straight male and agreeing with a lot of these other points that people like AOC or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and sort of all these prominent figures. I've been attacked for agreeing with them, and it's just now that sort of people are starting to wake up.
Well, I think everybody comes from a different background. I think that's a big proponent of the issue we're seeing today. Is we had this document written 200, 300 years ago by just nothing but old white guys. There was not a single transgender person in that room, and I think you, growing up as I think your background as a homosexual male, and as part of the LGBTQ community, I think that your opinion does matter, whether people want to respect it or not. I think it matters. I think as long as you're not straight, I think we can listen. So. CoStar. Today's podcast is sponsored by CoStar. CoStar is a highly personalized social experience bringing astrology into the 21st century. Featured in New York Times, Cosmo, BuzzFeed, Vanity Fair, Vogue, Refinery 29, The Guardian, and more. This app features planet-by-planet compatibility. You add friends to keep track of their zodiac signs. Personality analysis customized to your entire astrological chart. Real-time updates as the planets move. Did you know typical horoscopes are written only to a person's sun sign? But that's only one part of your astrological chart. It doesn't take into account the moon, other planets in the solar system, or the 12 houses of the zodiac, each of which represents a different part of your life, like relationships, work, and home. Even if you're an Aries sun, a Libra moon, or a Virgo, rising change everything. Bang an astrology app, says Dua Lipa. That's Dua Lipa talking. By positioning the human experience against a backdrop of a vast universe, CoStar creates a shortcut to real talk in a sea of small talk. A way to talk about who we are and how we relate to each other. It doesn't reduce complexity. It doesn't judge. It understands. Use code Hoffman to get 10% off of CoStar Premium. Thank you, CoStar. Dua Lipa. I read a few books from him. He's actually he's a great guy.
I think it's she now.
Oh, I apologize. I apologize for that.
But anyways, let's talk.
Well, real quick, a lot of people don't know we're actually friends on CoStar. You? What sign are you?
So I'm a Cancer with a
What's your moon sign?
So my moon sign is Virgo,
Okay.
and I'm also my Jupiter. See, when I was born, Jupiter was sort of in retrograde, and so that kind of affects my personality in that I tend to, be sensitive about some things, which explains how these issues mean a lot to me. These political issues, because fundamentally I'm a person who is sort of influenced by the Jupiter, which is sort of that type of personality right there.
Wow. If you haven't figured it out already, I'm an Aquarius.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that.
If you haven't
You're
figured it out,
probably an Aquarius.
So-
because you definitely fit that.
if
kind
you
of
didn't think I was
personality.
Aquarius by now, just wait, because look, Grant, when Grant invited me on this podcast, he says, oh, we want to do a podcast June 7th, and that's not today. So the first thing I do is I go on CoStar. You can download it. Use code Hoffman, 10% off. Totally worth it. And
Totally worth to get the premium because, well, first of all, I like to keep the sponsors of this podcast. Like if there's a lot of people who come up and want to do a sponsorship, right? They have to be an app or a service that I myself am 100% behind. So when I say CoStar is the best astrological app, I'm telling the truth.
yeah,
But when you get the premium, you kind of get some extra information about sort of the history of your sign, and also it can kind of shed light on more of who you are as a person. And like it says, it doesn't judge; it understands.
Yeah.
And I've been a firm believer in astrology for years now.
yeah.
I
Well,
think
it's a science. Like what?
Right.
It's
Right. People think like, oh, it's superstitious. Like, oh, you're just like no. I encourage you just
just give it a try.
Just give it a try, and I guarantee you, it's real.
Yeah. So,
What were you saying?
well, going back to that. So, and I'm sure you guys have seen this too. Anybody who follows the science. First thing I did, I go on CoStar on my premium account, and I look at the star chart of June 7th, the day Grant invited me on this podcast, and I saw that Mars and Venus and the stars around them were organized in a way that I did not want to be around someone. I did not want to be around a Cancer, with a Virgo moon sign. So pushed it back 5 days. Wasn't a problem. Thanks for accommodating that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it didn't even cross my mind because when you explained to me like why it's not a good idea to have it on June 7th, at first I was kind of like, oh, okay, well that's fine, and then you kind of explained it to me like from an astrological standpoint. I'm like, oh, of course. So I mean, yeah, I still got a lot to learn. I'm not perfect at this stuff, but I think it's just important that we all learn it. Oh, so now we're talking about sort of science and astrology and sort of the way the planets are arranged. There's this theory out there that sunspot activity is the main driver of climate change, and I know you've done a lot of research on this.
Yeah, actually, I gave a talk on this at a conference back in. It's been years. Wow. 2018. So, yeah, but yeah. What's your question?
So I'm just kind of curious because I've heard this sort of, especially recently, been propagating on sort of these fake news, right-wing news outlets like Fox News and Ben Shapiro and stuff like that. So yeah, why is this now suddenly a thing? And also, like, what can we do to reverse some of this climate? Are we completely doomed? Are we completely doomed? Because a lot of people, including myself, have been kind of freaked out, especially when you look at sort of like the research that you've been doing about how we can end it, but we have to act now. We have to act now. That's kind of like the prevailing scientific consensus is that there's no way we're gonna avoid this unless we act right now. So what are the things that we can do to sort of lower our carbon footprint, as has been the common How do we lower our carbon footprint?
Well, let me start by telling you, the sunspot activity. I mean, let me just tell you something. If they're from the right, they're not going to take personal accountability for their actions.
So it's just kind of like that. The prevailing right wing idea, just blame it on the sun.
Yeah, because it can't possibly be.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so I
my koi pond. So
yeah. So this is sort of like the idea of being propagated by like Jordan Peterson and others like him.
yeah,
And I think the reason why some of these people, they're usually like 18 to 25-year-old white guys, straight, and they're sort of like they listen to these people because they sound smart. They make a lot of they use a lot of fancy words, and that's why people think they're smart because they sound smart.
yeah.
But when you really like dive into the actual what they're saying, it's total bullshit, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, oh my god.
You know what it is?
Especially when you look at like actual scientific research like yourself, what you've been doing, and it's just amazing.
It's bullshit that they, caked up and put makeup on, make it look pretty, put a bow around it, and serve it to these, these, Republicans, and they love it. They think
and think about how they're making money off of this. At the end of the day, they are making money off of it. And what are they doing? What are they doing with this money other than living in their rich mansions on the lakeside?
Yeah.
So people say like, oh, why would they lie? Why would they say all this stuff? That's why, because they're making money off of it.
Yeah. I think you look at this capitalist society, and these people. Here's what they're doing. They're capitalizing on the ignorance of the right. Which is so easy to do.
It's so easy.
So that's what they're doing, and I mean, it's just a question of like, is this the type of do we want like a capitalist, a terrible, place for minorities and the trans community.
And in some ways, I kind of get why they do it, right? Because you look at these young white guys, and they're just completely hateful and unaccepting, and they sort of obviously have a hole inside that they're trying to fill. Here comes like this loudmouth ultra right conservative figure like Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson. He's sort of like really far on the right.
Alt-right, yeah.
The alt-right, as you would say,
Nazis.
although I would say that it's more right than even that.
Yeah.
So they come in and they sort of like give their whole spiel, and they say, well, these people are the reason for your sadness. And these like young people at 18 to 25 white guys, they're kind of like, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe it's all the left's fault, and that's the reason why I'm not happy. But in reality, what the left is all about fundamentally is just making people's lives better.
Yeah. I think what they're doing, I think what the left has done is, you look back, we have this document that was, 200, 300 years old, right? 250 years old, written by just, nothing but these, old white guys who we don't actually look at, what their, values were, right? It's like you said, these people own slaves.
Right.
These people own slaves.
Right. And again, these young, impressionable, these 18 to 25-year-old white guys.
They're told to look up to them.
Exactly.
It's a false history.
100%.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Well, real quick, I just want to mention, it's like you said, the left is just simply trying to mend the wounds of the systemic oppression that the people have seen, and the right just wants to keep it how it is. So,
Yes.
yeah, go ahead.
So, I was on the topic of sort of like, how the average kind of person lives their life. 18 to 25, young.
Wow.
Not necessarily white, but just anyone in America. And it's like, okay, we're working. So I had a friend from England actually.
Okay.
And I came and visited him for a talk. We were giving a talk on systemic oppression in wrestling and stuff like that. Because as you know, I'm a big wrestler. So I was talking to him about sort of how we live our lives here, and I was telling him like, yeah, we have to work 40 hours a week at a greasy restaurant, and even then we still don't make enough to afford healthcare, schooling, and we have no time off, and people are constantly just being mean to each other and everything. Like you're being constantly bombarded by your landlord and everything. And I'm just like telling him all this stuff, and he's just in shock. He's like, "You're kidding, right? You're kidding." Because he said an average person here, we work 20 hours a week. We make living wage. We get healthcare provided for us. We get schooling provided for us. We get a good wage, a living wage, and we get everyone. We tell our landlord, hey, can you lower the rent? Like I can't afford this right now. They're like, okay, you're right. He's like, I'm like, well, and he's like, on top of that, we get 3 months of vacation, every year, 3 months for free where we don't have to work. I'm like, are you serious? Like that's how we're like. Why are we not doing what they're doing? We're saying like, oh, America is a great country. Why? Well, isn't that the goal? Isn't that what we should be striving for? And I think we gotta take some inspiration and sort of like follow the model that's been set by a lot of these Scandinavian countries like Sweden and Denmark and Norway, Amsterdam. They 100%. And so, I mean, they have kind of again been the model for us. And Venezuela as well. You see a bunch of South American countries starting to follow this model.
Yeah, I mean,
you kind of see the entire world saying like that's what we need to do. That right there, and yet here we are, just all USA, and we're just like still living in 1950s.
Exactly, Stone Age. I mean, it's constant. It's constant.
It is constant. That's a perfect word for it because it's been this way since the founding of our country. 200 years ago.
300 years ago. Yeah,
and yet we're still like glued to this like flawed document written by a bunch of old white guys.
Yeah,
who owned slaves.
Tell me about it.
Who owned slaves, by the way.
Yeah,
these people owned slaves.
And we don't talk enough about that.
No one's having this conversation. See, I was giving this talk at here actually, University of Utah.
Okay.
And in one of the classes, and I noticed that everyone, all these young people, all these young 18 to 25-year-old white guys, straight, are in these classrooms, and no one's talking about climate change. You go into the engineering book, no one's talking about climate change. No one's talking about sustainability. no one's talking about these great. No one. There are no. All the signs around campus. All the signs around campus are saying, we gotta live like what's America proud. Work hard. Lower taxes and climate change isn't real. Climate change is a hoax. That's the kind of the sort of consensus being pushed by these professors, right? So we really need a sort of a shift in our courts.
That's scary.
I know.
The engineers tomorrow are being corrupted by politics.
Well, that's not the way. You want to hear something really scary?
Yeah. Talk about it.
I was in Salt Lake City. I was driving around late at night and just got home from a talk I gave. Actually, here at the University of Utah, on it was last June Pride Month. So I was giving a talk on. I was giving a talk on sort of how we need to include more, how the conversation changes when you're talking to an African American trans versus a white or Asian trans.
Yeah.
I was giving this talk, went great. Me and my wife, we went and we stopped to get a bite to eat at In-N-Out, which is a terrible company, by the way. But I gotta be honest, their food is
so good.
Really good. Their food is good. So, but anyways, we're driving back, and we go across this overlook kind of road, right? That overlooks kind of the city.
Yeah.
And there are we just passed them. There are 5 trucks driven by a bunch of young, probably 18, maybe 25 white guys.
Wow.
And the back of the trucks have these sort of stickers science isn't real and Trump 2020 and make America great again. And they have a blue flag, the flag with that blue line. And they're just throwing bottles around. They're littering everywhere. There's a group of women, they were just smoking some weed, right? Which is not a very big deal, right? And they're coming over and they're sexually harassing them and they're catcalling them and they're just making a complete ruckus and ruining what is honestly a beautiful spot and kind of tainting it with their hateful activity.
Wow.
And that is not the only time I've seen sort of that kind of behavior. It's everywhere.
I think that is a perfect example as the result of white privilege. Thinking they rule the world, they can do whatever they want, have zero respect for minorities.
Right, and that was, again, I am a white male. So I grew up with this sort of push, you are the exalted one. You need to be you need to control everyone, right? But I was smart enough to say, hey, well, what about these other people that are less fortunate, maybe, that aren't as privileged as me?
How do you talk about that? Go ahead, talk about that. Yeah.
Oh, my white, the privilege that I felt and how I sort of. So, growing up, my father was a ultra conservative kind of watches Tucker Carlson every night, and always talked about owning land. He would say I'm buying a crystal ball. I'd buy all this land, and just talk about investing and all this terrible stuff. I was sort of like, Dad. Finally, I was like, Dad, what about these what about these people who aren't as fortunate as we are? What about these people who grew up on the streets, sort of these young black kids?
You asked a question.
I asked a simple question.
You asked the question.
He, of course, he looked at me for 10 seconds. And finally, he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, get out of my house. So I got kicked out of my house.
Wow.
Just for voicing my opinion.
I'm just
And
asking a
that's-
question.
Exactly. So I left, and that was sort of like the turning point where I'm like, sometimes you got to do something that's not accepted by a lot of the influential people in your life, right? Like what I did there. And it's not going to be easy, but you have to for these other people that are not as fortunate as you are. So that's sort of like what my transition from, kind of like being like a, like accepting like person, and then like transitioning into, okay, I know like what I need to do because I've been blessed with this privilege, and I need to like, help these other less fortunate people.
Yeah. It's something you mentioned. You mentioned, these white supremacists, in their trucks. You mentioned the blue stripe on the flag. You brought up the blue. It was a blue stripe on the flag.
Yes.
So something I want to bring up. I want to talk about the issue of defunding the police. To some of us, it's like common sense, but there are people out there who think that this police brutality, this racism, systemic, oppression, systemic racism is warranted. It's I want to get your opinion on that.
Right. Well, listen here. We know for a fact that there is systemic racism within the police department. We know this 100%, right? Because we've seen last couple of years ago, unfortunately, George Floyd, bless his heart, was murdered in cold blood. And it was just like, I think that's when people started to wake up to the sort of idea, like, why are we giving money to this corrupt organization? All the stats show that lower police involvement in our communities results in lower crime.
Yeah, I think we need to have these more social workers. Actually, I gave a talk on this a few years back. I gave a talk on this. And we talked about replacing the police with social workers to talk people down
100%.
rather than to just out of cold blood murder these people just for walking on the street because they don't like the way they look. So we talk about
the conservatives, they will say, listen, there are black cops and there are female cops. Like,
yeah.
It's not just there's not just white male cops. To them, I would say, it is quite clear that they are being separated during their training, and they're sort of building this sort of like privileged, like macho, like male mentality in these white police officers, where the black police officers are just these innocent guys. They're just they're kind of like not being treated the same. They're not as bad.
I think if you've ever done any research on the training program to become a police officer, it's indoctrination. Indoctrination of believing that white people are somehow better, or minorities are criminals, and that's what essentially what you learn in the academy. I had a buddy. Actually, you might know him, Janice.
Yeah,
Janice Green, and she signed up for the police position as a female. Right? She was a lovely woman coming in. I mean,
100%.
we ended up we attended one of her talks and met with her after. So you know her, you know. So she lovely woman, and she comes out of the training a alt right Nazi systemic, you know.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, first of all, that's very sad because we've known Janice for. I mean, we all go way back.
Yeah.
She kind of, however, felt that tug that I was talking about earlier towards like that, you know, this false sense of duty and kind of like, you know, being a white person, you know, you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right? This sort of pull towards like entitlement. I'm entitled to be an asshole to everyone. So,
Well, that's as far as what you're taught. And
by the way, you want to know a quick way to see if an organization is diverse and you know inclusive? Look at them during Pride Month and see how they act. If they are brave enough, because they will take a loss, a hit to their finances. They will take a loss if they change the colors of their logo. That's a surefire way to tell if a company is, you know, has good intentions.
I think that makes a enormous. I think people underestimate the contribution it makes to, you know, put a gay bi flag behind your logo, an LGBT flag behind your logo. I think it's an incredible contribution to the community and I mean I personally I have a flag in my front yard. And I think, you know, that's making a difference. You know, I have a sign in my window, and I think those are the types of things that are really gonna, you know, move this country forward.
Right. And I had a friend, a researcher, you may know him, Martel Crafts from the University of Utah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow! You still in touch with that
Yeah.
guy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
you know, he's been doing some very interesting.
He's
research.
he's that one dude. He's that one dude. Gosh, it was
He
with
had
big glasses.
he had long hair.
Big glasses.
He kind
Kind of nerdy.
yeah, a little bit nerdy.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, but
You should
smart.
have him on. You should have him on.
Oh, we will in the future. But one of the smartest people I know, right? He's doing research on this stuff. What he found, and this is a study verified in all the journals. Which is hard to do for this kind of topic, right? Because like the scientific, sort of the overlords, especially at University of Utah, are all very right wing conservative. Like, we gotta focus on how to make more oil and stuff like that. Like how do we make more fossil fuels and stuff like that. That's all they're really interested in. But anyways, they published this paper. Right, he does a study. He says for every if just 25% of neighborhoods in the United States put out a pride flag, right, an updated pride flag, everything all inclusive, right?
Yeah.
If just 25% of neighborhoods did that, spread throughout the country, we would see a 80% decrease in hate crime violence.
Really?
So he proved this in a scientific paper.
Wow.
And okay, 25%. That's a lot of flags, right? That is a lot of flags.
It's not
That
too
being
much
said, is it that much to ask if it can reduce crime by 80%? So
Wow. Good for Martel.
Martel. Good for him. I mean, yeah, Martel. That was a big win for him, and I think he, is starting to get he's starting to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Because before he was, kind of all over the place. He would ask sort of these questions that, economic questions. Right? But now he's asking the more important questions. So how do we make people feel safe?
Yeah.
And how do we, move our country forward and be more inclusive? So we've been going for a while here. Let's wrap it up with
Wow.
one more question, right? Because I have you on here,
Yeah.
and I really would want to tap into some of that knowledge that you've been kind of. It's because I know you work hard researching all these important topics.
Well, don't give me anything too hard.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this climate change thing, right? Because this is a very hot button issue for people. How do we sort of okay? So you have this perception right now that it's bad. It's just people in the middle, right? Oh, it's bad, but what can we do about it, right? What can we do about it? What is the thing that what can we do today that will help? And of course, we need everyone, even the right wing nut jobs. We need them to do this too. But just as a starting point to get everyone involved, what do we need to do to just X out this climate change so we can move forward?
I'm glad you brought this up. I'm glad you brought this up. So because we've been seeing climate change. If you look back, and you look forward, if you look back, you go back and then look forward to today, you will see there is climate change. And, I think it's important to realize that, there is changes going on in our climates. And that's an issue. And I think, these people in the middle, I think you brought up a really good point about them. Well, what can we do? What can we do? So I think, and then you have people on the right, who are honestly doing the opposite, So, but yeah, that's a really good point you brought up about that. So,
Fantastic.
I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much for coming on the
Hey,
show.
thanks for having me.
I mean, again, it's really great to just have scientific thinkers like you who are sort of asking the tough questions and pushing the movement forward.
It's refreshing.
And I mean, a lot of what you say, I'm gonna have to rewatch this podcast a couple of times because a lot of what you say is just very intense, sort of above the head. A lot of it goes over my head, right? A lot of the scientific talk that you do goes over my head because it's just because we're not used to sort of hearing these talking points, right?
Yeah.
It's all being drowned out by the right wing nut jobs.
Yeah.
And it's just great to have, a mind such as yourself who just put these things into terms that we can actually understand. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that.
Hey, thanks for having me. And anytime I'm always available. So, thanks for having me on here.
Well, I'm sure we'll have you on in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So where can the people find you? Where can they find you if they want to get more of your research and sort of?
I guess I would. The first thing I would recommend is go to YouTube, and I have some talks. I did a few talks a few years ago. Just if you want to learn more about these issues, these important issues
On climate change.
On climate change, systemic oppression, all of it. I gave a talk in 2018, so just go ahead and check that out.
Have you done any talks more recently?
I did a few.
When's your next talk?
I did a few in
are you doing
2018? I think.
When is your next talk?
Well, a lot of people have been asking me that, and the way things are, the bureaucracy is, so but I think people are going to be happy. I think people are going to be happy soon. So,
that's great to hear. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great again, and we got again. Thank you so much for kind of just putting these issues in perspective.
Right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.